A diplomatic rift is brewing between the Department of International Relations and Cooperation and the African Commission on Nuclear Energy's Executive Secretary Enobot Agboraw. This comes after reports that Dirco allegedly irregularly terminated Agboraw's diplomatic immunity and privileges and stopped payment to Afcone and its South African staff. He joins me now in studio. Thank you very much. Dirco Spokesperson Chrispin Phiri had indicated his availability, but unfortunately we are unable to have him on the line, so we will certainly give them an opportunity to respond to this conversation. Mr. Agboraw, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for inviting me, and I thank God for this opportunity to speak about a subject that is important for progress and prosperity on our continent.
So let's talk about what your organisation, Afcone, represents and what it is that you do before we get into the cracks of the matter that then speak to your status.
Afcone is the intergovernmental African organization that was established by the Treaty of Pelindaba to promote peace and security in Africa through ensuring that state parties to the treaty adhere to the non-proliferation and disarmament provisions of the treaty. Afcone is also mandated to promote the peaceful applications of nuclear science and technology to foster industrial and socio-economic development. And
you've been in a fair amount of work with Russia in that regard, correct?
We work with all nuclear suppliers, Russia, European countries, China, Korea, international organizations such as the International Atomic Energy Agency, the World Nuclear Association, Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Our job is to advise African countries and to help African countries to be able to use the peaceful applications of nuclear energy in medicine and industry, to produce electricity, to raise the living standards of our people, to bring industrial development, to promote health, agriculture, and all the other things that nuclear science and technology can bring.
Mr. Agboraw, so that's the nice side of your mandate, but obviously there's been a problem, right? Now your diplomatic immunity and privileges have been terminated from what we understand by Dirco. Is this correct? What is the status? How did this come to be?
There's an issue that started between the African Commission on Nuclear Energy and the African Union last year, because there was a mistaken understanding at the African Union Commission that Afcone was an organ of the African Union and that African Union staff regulations and rules applied in Afcone. And when this issue started in May of last year, I pointed out to the African Union Commission that Afcone is an autonomous African intergovernmental organization that is independent of the African Union. We have our own member states that are different from the member states of the African Union. We have not adopted African Union staff regulations and rules. We have a budget that is separate from the African Union, and we have our own governance structures.
So let me come in then and ask two questions, right? In your opinion, how does the AU Commission misunderstand their relationship with Afcone, firstly? And secondly, what was your relationship with the AU Commission prior to them interfering, if you will, in this matter?
We have, I should say, a political relationship with the African Union. We do not have an administrative relationship The African Union, of course, is the mother intergovernmental organization in Africa. They lead the way in the objectives for the entire continent. So what we do is we try to align our activities to be consistent with the vision that the AU has for Africa. But that's the extent of our relationship. The chairman of the African Union Commission is the depository of the Treaty of Pelindaba. And he has a role in the designation of the executive secretary, but it's not an administrative role.
Do they contribute to your budgets at all?
No, they do not.
So let's go back to the issue around Zahir Leher, and I think he's the individual that's had some interaction with your office. Some of those interactions, from what we understand, have broken protocols. What are these protocols that have been broken, if indeed they have? And what is the current status?
I would take a step back to give you some context. So like I said, this issue started in May, June last year. And the African Union Commission insisted that Afcone was part of them. But in January of 2024, the African Union published a report that stated that Afcone is indeed autonomous and independent of the African Union, that we don't use their rules, we don't get money from them, and they cannot engage with us except through our supreme governance organ, which is a conference of our state parties. Unfortunately, this issue with the African Union had gained momentum as far as the African Union Commission was concerned. And in January, when they published that report, that was the point at which they should have stopped all interference in Afcone. But they did not stop. And things just escalated and eventually culminated in the African Union Commission chairperson sending me a letter in July that he was terminating my employment contract with Afcone. Mind you, my employment contract is not with the African Union. He's terminating my employment contract with Afcone because I do not adhere to African Union staff rules and regulations, and also because he claims to be my appointment officer, but his role is a ceremonial role. I give you an example. For example, in my home country, we have tribes. So I went to my home village with a newborn baby, and I present the baby to, say, one of the village chiefs, you know, that we have a new member of the tribe, and could you maybe say some blessings over the child? Then, let's say 17 years later, the chief said, well, remember you presented that child to me, so I'm ordering you to take that child out of school because I'm responsible. That's not the best example, but it gives you a picture.
So some idea. So what was your response to this letter from the AU?
We informed the AU that they were mistaken, that the decision that they'd taken was unlawful. And we requested to meet them, to have a discussion, a round table, to resolve any misunderstandings. But that did not happen because we did not get any response. Our lawyers, CDH Incorporated here in Johannesburg, had written a report in May of this year, which looked at the relationship between Afcone and the African Union from the point of view of international law, the Vienna Convention and the Treaty of Pelindaba that established Afcone. They also requested to meet the African Union Commission, and a copy of this report was sent to Dirco, and they requested to meet Dirco officials to go through the report and to come to a common understanding. Dirco did not respond. Our liaison point in Dirco is this Mr. Zahir Leha. Mm-hmm. When I got this letter from the African Union Commission, which was unlawful, and we informed the African Union, it turned out that they couldn't implement this decision because I have no employment contracts with them. Mm. And the African Union itself declared in January of this year that they can only engage with Afcone through our supreme governance organ, which is the Conference of State Parties. So the African Union was breaking its own rules and procedure by contacting the government of South Africa directly. They shouldn't do that. They know that the point of entry into Afcone is the Conference of State Parties. Now, South Africa is a state party to the Treaty of Pelindaba, and the treaty gives the responsibility for addressing all issues concerning Afcone to the Conference of State Parties. So as a state party to the treaty, South Africa should have forwarded this request from the African Union Commission to the Conference of State Parties. But Mr. Zahir Leha, who is the liaison point between Afcone and the government, it appears decided on his own behalf to implement this unlawful African Union Commission.
What would his interests be? And just how much has he done? Has he withdrawn certain privileges that you were entitled to? Or
I'm not sure. I think he attempted to. But what is very strange is that he was giving me 24 hours to return my papers. And I'm kind of confused why there was such a rush. Mm. I mean, this was all being done without giving me the opportunity to come to Dirco and to discuss with them.
So let's talk about, Mr. Agboraw, let's talk about the contents of that letter. There obviously has to be a reasoning behind why your papers are being recalled. What were the contents of that letter?
Well, I think he said that he was implementing the decision of the African Union Commission. But Mr. Leha was not always like this. I have email communication from him from March of last year, where he is denouncing the interference of the African Union Commission in Afcone. So I'm really confused about the U-turn. He's also the representative of the government of South Africa in the Afcone Commission. So he knows, how the treaty works. He knows the responsibilities that the treaty assigns to the different organs of the organization.
So does he have an ulterior motive? Because you seem to suggest that he's acting contrary to the factual information that he has at hand.
I don't know whether he has an ulterior motive or not. All I can say is I am very confused by his inconsistency. This matter is going to be considered in court tomorrow in Pretoria, and I hope that he'll probably have an opportunity to explain to the court the reasoning behind or the justification for his actions.
Okay, Mr. Enobot Agboraw, we appreciate your time. We're going to have to end this conversation here. We had hoped that Dirco Spokesperson Chrispin Phiri would be a part of the conversation, but he has not been responsive, contrary to earlier confirmation that he would be available. African Commission on Nuclear Energy's Executive Secretary Enobot Agboraw, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. You're watching News.